Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sprint 200 review. This was a regular 2-week sprint, and let's get started. I'll start with the overview, Jeffrey on the UI, Adam on providers, and Joe on the platform. This PR, we had less PRs merged this sprint. I think there's been a bit of a focus on fixes and some of the more complicated issues. The closed PRs are a reasonable number of bugs and enhancements. We're going to be focusing more on bugs now that we're starting to tighten up for the Oparn release. And over to Jeffrey for the UI.
Hey, good morning. In this sprint, 15 PRs got merged in the UI Classic repo, out of which 5 are bugs, 7 are enhancement, 1 technical debt, and 2 others. I can explain about them in the following slides. This PR is a fix for an undefined method occurred while publishing an infra VM to a template. Adam made a fix by adding a request info helper method into the VM helper file and fix this issue. Next slide. David marked the strings for translations under the manage quota form, and minor CSS changes were also done to prevent some text overlapping issues. Next slide. Adam added the console support feature to the Lenovo physical servers providers and extracted the queue method into core. Check was introduced to show and hide the access physical server console button in the physical infrastructure summary page. Next slide. Converted the HTML tabs and catalog item edit page by reusing the MIQ custom tab components. Next slide. The data store forms were converted from Angular to React. The namespace and domain forms were using the same Angular controller. So after conversion, both these forms are using the same React component with some few differences in the props to distinguish them. The next slide. Converted the host HTML table under the catalogs edit page environment tab to a React component. Next slide. As part of Angular conversion, Melody converted the timeline form to React. Next slide. Melody had marked certain strings in like success, failure, etc. for translations in the timeline form page. Next slide. The messages were not translated that were being displayed after the resize form save or update action. So those strings are also marked for translation by Melody. Next slide. Gilbert removed few unused Angular code which comes under the set retirement date form, and Melody had upgraded 2 packages named NWS API from 2.0.7 to 2.2.1 and Minimist from 1.2.5 to its higher revision version. That's all from Rend. Over to Adam.
Thanks, Jeffrey. So this sprint in core, we added the remote console supports feature to physical server. Previously, this had been, so it's only supported by Lenovo, and previously the check was just to see if it was a physical server and it would show the remote console. As we've added more physical infrastructure types, we need to move to using supports feature for these types of things. So we added the supports feature method to the physical server based model. For AutoSCE, they made an enhancement to better handle a response payload that has no body. They found that if you gave the wrong IP address and it was just a regular standard web server and it returned an error body, they were throwing an exception as opposed to handling it properly. So they're taking care of that now. They're also using a different value for the volume name. So it's a little bit more of a user-friendly name. Just the standard name was actually more of a machine-readable name. And so this is more of a descriptive name the user would see on the AutoSCE UI. For IBM Cloud, we made some changes to only allow resize for non-SAP type VMs, since Reconfigure is not supported for those types of VMs. So Elisa put in a PR to track the flavor type as part of refresh, and then check that flavor type during the supports check for VM resize. We also fixed some VCR errors with some updated AWS gems. So the IBM Cloud Storage has an S3 compatible API, and newer versions of the S3 gem are calling the API differently, and so that was causing our VCR to fail. And so it's just a quick fix to update the VCRs to represent the new URIs that are being called. Jay put in a fix to strip SSH public key comments of new lines, since the gem that we're using to calculate the fingerprint will fail if there are new lines of the comment. And so this is not really shown anywhere, and so it's just a good way to get the fingerprint fixed. Next slide. For HMC, they fixed binary encoded strings in the VCR cassette. There were some non-printable ASCII characters in one of the physical servers that they had as part of their environment, and so they removed that so that they were better able to ignore sensitive data in the VCRs, because it'll be it's easier to strip it out during the VCR record process. They also put an enhancement to track shared memory pools. They're being mapped to resource pools on the ManageIQ side. HMC is interesting as they have different resource pools for CPU and memory. So they had already been getting CPU shared CPU pools, and that's the technical parent for a VM. In the future, we might look at adding additional relationships to be able to track the parent memory pool as well, even if it's not the actual single parent, so that a VM can have both a memory and a CPU resource pool. They also fixed handling of user task type events. The event handler was not processing these properly, and so it was causing a failure in the event parser. For Lenovo, we added the supports console to Lenovo physical servers, since Redfish doesn't support it, but Lenovo does. And in VMware, we added Heartbeat to a file for the container and process type runtimes for the non-Rails event catcher. And that is it for providers. Over to Joe.
For core enhancements, Jason removed line numbers from the translation files we generate. The goal is to decrease the noise when reviewing translation changes. Next, Brandon added a GitHub Action workflow to build the monolithic container automatically when it's triggered by the ManageIQ pods repository. Nassar added readiness and liveness probes for Kafka. Next, Brandon did some cleanup of the RPM build repo by removing a Docker file and RPM build script, since that can all be done in mock, and that ensures dependencies are correctly enumerated in the RPM spec. I added support for Postgres 13 while still allowing 10 to work just in case. Adam added a heartbeat for non-Rails workers. Next, Jason updated Ansible runner to 2.3.0. Brandon's bot updated the Go dependencies in Podify. And I added the ability to manually build pods through GitHub Actions. Next slide. For core bugs, Jason forced the sticky bit on /temp that was incorrectly removed in the UBI8 base image. This was causing errors when Ruby looked for a temporary directory. Frank, David, and I fixed some backend translation issues. Next, I fixed an issue where the appliance's RPM wasn't specifically requiring Postgres 13. Next, Adam fixed an issue where Vim strings were serialized in custom attributes, and we needed to be replaced with plain strings. He also fixed an issue where the ensure block of the DRB remote invoker was trying to call destroy on a nil object. I added some sorely missed logging when we filter events that could be evaluated. Previously, this filtering was done with no logging. Finally, Jason fixed some missing packages in the ManageIQ Ansible VENV RPM. Next slide.
All right, and that's it for the Sprint 200 review. The next Sprint 201 review will be on November 30th at the normal time and place. And again, I want to thank everyone in the community, all the presenters today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.